Afternoon. Thank you for your patience, and I know we didn't send you out information regarding the topic. That was by design, and I'm sure you'll understand why as we go through this. And I will tell you in advance, there's a little bit to unpack with this, so please be patient. There's elements I want to share with you first before we get to the crux of it all. But my name is Paul Penzone. I'm the Maricopa County Sheriff. And, when I meet with my employees or talk in the public, I say that when you're the head of a law enforcement organization, the two most critical responsibilities that you have are first and foremost to ensure that you're the gatekeeper, that you protect the integrity of the office and the mission therein. And close 1A would be a commitment to ensure that you're doing everything to keep your employees safe and to protect them and their families as well as the public. And I take those responsibilities very seriously. I know earlier today, maybe some of you, or maybe not because it's shift change, but the media in general may have heard Supervisor Hickman, who's now the chair of the board, talk about the problem that is fentanyl in our community. And it is not a new problem, I would tell you. I've been in law enforcement for 3 decades, and I spent a good portion of my time in law enforcement working in narcotics. So I have seen, when crack cocaine was a considerable problem, when methamphetamine was thriving, knowing the ongoing issue of that is heroin and opiates, and just all the different pills and problems that we have in society, whatever the newest drug may be. But I can unequivocally tell you that I have never seen a more devastating drug than fentanyl. How dangerous it is to every family, not just by those who ingest it, but those who are exposed to it, the lives that it's taken, and the impact that it has on our society. So a portion of what we're going to talk about today relates to that issue, and then the other part of it we'll get to. But first, and we have some slides that we'll go through just to give you some statistics. But in the jails, we have seen more overdoses than is acceptable at any level. There's no overdose that is acceptable, but we've had in 2022, 172 inmates were taken to the hospital, correctional health services, because of drug-related overdose incidents. 17 of the in-custody deaths that were the result of overdose of drugs or a major contributing factor. 194 inmates were tested, and they tested positive through urinalysis for some type of drug, and of that 194, 114 inmates tested positive for fentanyl. Well, I'm often asked, how is it even possible? How is it that inmates are overdosing in jail? Sometimes they come in with drugs on board and their health conditions lead to this. Sometimes they figure out creative ways to bring drugs into the jails. There are a multitude of factors, unfortunately, that you see a secure environment that's unable to secure itself from the infusion of drugs, and that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable in the population that we see our children and our family members dying of drug overdoses or addicted. It's not acceptable that in an environment where we're responsible for the care and custody of inmates, that we have folks that die on our watch. That doesn't mean that we're always responsible for it, but I have always tried to lead by example, that we own the responsibility for everyone that we care for. Some of the mitigating efforts in 2022, there were 282 incident reports for narcotics in the jails, meaning seizures of some sort. 158 incoming inmate postcards were intercepted in the mailroom. By staff, they tested positive for being soaked in fentanyl and or methamphetamine. And since October of 2022, 1,503 detention officers, sergeants, and lieutenants were trained to deploy Narcan. I don't have the number right in front of me how many lives have been saved or potentially saved because of the distribution of Narcan in our jails, but it is an extremely large number. So as the sheriff, I have to make some difficult decisions, and the decision that I'm making today, and I don't want to say that it's difficult, it's just uncomfortable for some, not for me. I can't exist as the head of an office knowing that we aren't doing everything reasonable and humanly possible to ensure that drugs aren't coming into our jails. I have spoken to my colleagues over at the county, and this conversation has been going on for a little while, but I am at a stage now where I think it's not only important but appropriate that we purchase scanning machines so that every individual who enters our jail, whether it be staff, volunteers, anybody and everyone who enters into the secured population, will be checked to determine if we can mitigate and intercept any potential contraband coming into the jail. That's a pretty significant step, and the biggest challenge in it is a lot of employees will feel like this is a trust issue, that I'm questioning whether they can be trusted. That is not at all the case, but we live in a society where humans are flawed and failed, and we see good people do bad things, and bad things happen. And if we truly want to be a drug-free, safe jail system, we have to take every step possible, and that means demanding that our employees become comfortable with the idea that we should be checking them as they enter too, as well as everyone else. So we are looking at, and these dollars will come from cost savings already in my budget. But I put together a working group who will be determining what are the most effective and safe scanning devices when it comes to the equipment itself. How will we staff these, not from our existing detention officers, but who will we hire to monitor and manage these? How can we make them efficient and effective so that we're not holding employees up from getting in the jail? And we will, in short order, be implementing and moving forward in doing just that. I can't tell you the timeline because we have to look and determine a lot of factors first, but I will tell you it will be a number one priority. So what led me in front of you today? It isn't what I'm about to talk about because there's a lot of factors, but this is absolutely, I'll say, the tipping point for me. Not less than 10 minutes ago, we arrested a detention officer. This was an ongoing investigation. This detention officer, who was hired in October of 2019, recently worked with inmates and some folks on the outside and attempted to bring fentanyl and methamphetamine into the jail. We know through the evidence in the investigation, and we have strong reason to believe this was his first attempt. Exceptional work by our investigators put them in a position to intercept him before he brought the drugs into the jail. The drugs have been tested and tested positive for both methamphetamine and fentanyl. The estimated pill count is probably close to about 100 pills. I am extremely thankful that our MCSO team moved to stop this from happening and did such an exceptional job with the investigation. I will tell you it's ongoing. There are other tentacles to it and aspects that we are going to be committed to driving inward and outward. Meaning, are there other folks inside the jail that need to be indicted, and are there people on the outside that we can identify and arrest and hold accountable for poisoning our community? But the strongest statement I can make to you is this: I will never, ever, ever allow for any employee to act in any way that defies the integrity of this office, that endangers the inmate population for whom we're responsible, that jeopardizes the safety of the very colleagues they stand next to when they deal with these issues, and to think that not only would it potentially have cost health or life to the people inside the jail system, but the idea that maybe one of our employees could have come in contact with this fentanyl and had a health condition or an emergency of some sort, even potentially death, is without a doubt the most egregious act in violation of a pact of colleagues who are supposed to stand by each other and keep a community safe. I'm disgusted. This young man, whatever led him to make this decision, will now not only lose his career, but most likely the future that he has for himself is definitely going to be hindered in an adverse way. We will be prosecuting him for possession and use of narcotic drugs, promoting prison contraband and transport for sale. We are also charging him with counts related to theft because he was falsifying overtime slips alleging that he was working when he was not. So this is a compilation. This has been a work in progress, but I do find it very interesting that just earlier today, as you heard from Supervisor Hicks and from the board, the commitment that Maricopa County has in taking on this scourge and this devastating problem that we're dealing with, that is fentanyl. It is the drug of choice currently, and there may be a new one down the road, but I will tell you again, I've never seen anything as devastating as this, and I will not be the head of a sheriff's office standing on the sidelines and not doing everything possible to protect the lives of our employees and their exposure to this, the inmate population, and the population at large. I'm disgusted, and I'm going to take very swift and aggressive action, not just because of arresting this young man, but because of the threat it poses. What questions can I answer for you?
Sheriff, are any other law enforcement agencies currently doing what you're doing? Are you the first in county, state?
We've researched in short order. I believe that there are maybe some agencies across the nation, very few and far in between, that have implemented something like this where they are checking their own employees. It was more of a research element for us to see if there's something that is tried and true that would be helpful, not so much that we were concerned who was doing it or who isn't, because we feel so confident that it's the right thing to do. But we, as I said, we have a working group that are trying to determine who's using it, where, and how effective is it, and in and of itself, what needs to be supplementing this process to ensure that there are other means and ways to get drugs into the jail.
But as far as you know, this is the only agency in Arizona.
Yeah, I don't want to insult someone else if they are doing it, and I'm not aware of it, but I'm not aware of anybody else right now.
Do you know if there was any money exchanged between?
Yes, there was money exchanged. There was $1,000. That was the payment to the former employee who we arrested just a little while ago, and in exchange for attempting to bring this into the jail. It was actually intercepted in the parking lot of the jail.
Do you know how long this was going on for?
Well, the investigation itself is a little over 4 weeks from beginning till now. But as I said, and I can't get too much into some of the details of the case, we do know, and this employee has been put on ice for a while before he was actually arrested today. We do know that the evidence indicates this was the first attempt where he was basically, I'll say groomed, but I don't like using that term because it makes it sound as though you're unwitting for some reason and you fall into a space that others manipulated into. This was a choice that was made and a choice that there are consequences for. But inmates are very good with their tactics and building relationships with employees and trying to be advantageous with those relationships, and it's a difficult job. But I will say it again, unequivocally, the majority of the employees in this organization represent the highest standards of law enforcement, and they're great people doing a very difficult job, and the idea that one person would act in this manner and taint the rest of them is as unforgivable as the threat that he posed to him. But I'm also not so naive as to think it's the first time it's ever happened and the last time it'll ever happen. That's why we have to be accountable, and we have to have checks and balances.
These scanners, are they similar or the same as the ones at the airport?
So right now, we're not definitive about which one we're going to use. We've been evaluating a few of them because we don't want to create health risks for our employees. So for like X-ray machines, there are certain things that you want to lean towards and others that aren't going to be effective. So we're trying to nail down what is the most effective right now, and I assure you of this. If we are not using the most effective ones in scanning the inmates right now, if we need to upgrade the entire system and the entire jail system, I'm willing to do that. But we're going to find the one that is most effective and put it in play in all of our jails as soon as possible.
Scanners scan for drugs or weapons, or
they'll just scan for anything on the person that is a foreign object, and then you'll have to take that out and expose it.
Do you have an estimation of how many you're looking to need to buy?
Well, we have 5 jails, and one of the challenges that we're going to face is what I can't do is I can't make it so difficult for people to get into the workplace and get started on their shift that they're lined up, like we're waiting on a flight to take off. So we'll determine with 5 jails there's a possibility I'll purchase somewhere between 7 and 10, maybe more. And as I said, the price point on those is going to be anywhere from, let's just say, $150,000 to $250,000 per unit. But we are so far below the budget in our detention fund right now because we are very much responsible when it comes to the finances of the county taxpayers, that if we have to finance it internally, we will. But I've also spoken with our partners at the county to talk about this being a joint effort.
Do we know how much or how many drugs was this employee trying to take instead of a?
Yes, as I said earlier, it was wrapped up in a package, and when it's processed at the lab, they don't initially pill count. What they do is they weigh and then they check it for the particular drugs. But we estimate it to be right about 100 pills.
You mentioned that there was someone else involved. Is that person being looked at, or have they been arrested, or any leads on that?
Yeah, there are other folks both outside the jail system, in public, and those that are inmates inside the jail system that will, we're working forward on the investigation to levy other indictments. Some of those folks are already in custody.
Are you expecting any more arrests of any more deputies? Can you say whether or not you're concerned about whether or not this will extend to even more deputies possibly being arrested?
Well, I don't have any information from me right now that says we have other employees that are acting in the same capacity. So there's nothing on the ledger, but I will tell you that I hope not. I'm not going to make a promise to you to say that someone else hasn't been exposed or taken steps that they shouldn't. But as it stands right now, as I stand in front of you, I don't know of any others. This was the one sole actor.
You said you don't really have a specific timeline on this whole scanning and purchase process, but do you have at least a goal of when you would want these machines to be implemented by, at least some kind of specific date?
Yesterday, My goal is this: as quickly as we can identify. So what I'm not going to do is rush and buy equipment that we don't really feel is sustainable and solves the problem, or at least mitigates it as much as possible. So as quickly as we can determine what equipment is going to be most effective, and then also determine how we will properly staff it, and make adjustments to schedules so that we stagger our team if possible as they come in, so there's no holdups. But I assure you of this: there will be no delay in the implementation. As quickly as we can get it done, we will. And bureaucracy be damned. It's not going to stifle our efforts.
So it's not a question of if these machines will be installed, but just when and identifying which machines will be the most effective for MCSO.
Well, short of an act of the Lord above interfering with me being able to execute this, and maybe if I get some opposition that's unforeseen, I fully am committed to implementing this equipment and this process as soon as possible.
About how many employees and just people in general are going to potentially pass through these scanners every day? I mean, I can't imagine it would not be like a TSA line at some point.
You are correct, and that's why it's so complicated. As I said, we have 5 jails. On any given day, we're going to, I won't talk about the inmate side of the population, but just employees-wise, we have, when full, we have about 2,600 detention officers, counting civilian staff, correctional health, and others. Now, they're not all in the jail system. They're spread out in other places, but realistically, a couple thousand people a day will be going through these machines throughout 24-hour shift. But that's why I have to make the decision. Is it 1 machine? Is it 2 in particular jails? 3 because of the volume, how many staff is necessary. But I will tell you this, I don't take lightly my responsibility to make sound decisions when it comes to spending taxpayer dollars. I don't know there's any greater investment than this. When I think of saving lives, when I think of the lawsuits that we face because of the tragedies that occur in the jails, when I think of what it would be like if I had to hand a flag to a family because an employee was exposed to fentanyl and resulted in a death, I'll spend the dollars every day to prevent that from happening.
The deputies alleged to have made this deal with an inmate.
So basically, again, I'm going to be a little bit cautious, but the inmates built a relationship and became we'll say the facilitators of his acquisition of the drugs outside of the jail to bring them back in. That makes sense?
Anything that you're going to do right now before these screening machines come in, especially targeting maybe some of those inmates that were involved?
That's a broad question. Can you help me a little bit? There's a lot on there for me to just answer randomly. I want to be more specific.
So before the screening machines come in, what can we do now? Is there anything that you're doing right now to be able to keep more eyes and make sure this doesn't happen in between that time?
I think the most important thing is disciplines. A lot of the processes and the protocols that we already have in place have intentions to do exactly this without the equipment. Clear bags when our employees bring things into the jail. What types of things do they have freedom to bring in and out? Our supervisors doing a good job to making sure that anything that could potentially transport contraband in or out is properly being managed and monitored. So it's really just putting the screws down on the management side of our staff to make sure they're doing their job and they're helping the line level people be successful. And what's most important is, how do you protect your reputation when you're a profession like this? You have the courage to make sure that if you know of a colleague who's doing something they shouldn't, it doesn't have to be this extreme, it can be on the lower end of the scale, that you come forward and you make sure that we are able to address it when it is a small problem, not waiting until it's something this significant. And I think that is something that every profession needs to do, but no profession more than us.
Is there a particular jail where you're seeing more of drug and fentanyl overdoses and contraband?
I think just proportionately, the jail that has the highest populations normally has the biggest problems, but quite frankly, the jail system in general, and I think the systems across the nation, fentanyl overdoses are historic numbers, and the jail population probably is magnified as far as the general population challenge.
Have you already had any conversations with state or county officials surrounding the scanning machines, or is that something that's...
So I did speak with the head of correctional health, which is the medical and mental health providers inside the jail system. That is an extension of the county. And I spoke with the head of county health and expressed my concerns and said, this is what I wanted to do, and your employees will be inconvenienced just like mine. And she was 100% supportive and all in. I did speak with Supervisor Hickman yesterday. I didn't advise him of this until today because we wanted to keep this as tight-lipped as possible, hence why you guys weren't given a heads up. But he is fully supportive also. He's very passionate about our efforts to make Maricopa County a place where drugs aren't killing our children and we're keeping them safe to the best of our ability.
Apologies if this has been said before, but which jail did this occur at?
It's true. Lower Buckeye, thank you.
What could happen to the inmates that were involved? Would they possibly be hit with other crimes?
Anybody who was an active participant in this crime, and that we can establish the evidence to prove that they're culpable in those actions, will be charged with the appropriate crimes. It's normally conspiracy to possess or conspiracy to distribute, contraband, along the same lines as the former detention officer.
Sheriff, your staffing issues, pay issues for deputies have long been documented, and conditions for your detention officer because of your short staffing. Is this somehow a symptom of that? I don't know if that's the right word to use, but is it just part of overall staffing issues, pay issues?
Well, I think if low pay was a justification to commit a crime, you'd have to put me in jail. And I obviously say that tongue in cheek, but at the end of the day, there is no legitimate contributor to someone acting outside the law. There's no legitimate justification for doing something that put the lives of others in harm's way. If you don't like the pay here, that's unfortunate. We have worked our backsides off to increase the pay to make sure we're competitive with the market and that it is a fair wage. If it doesn't fit your needs, then find another profession. If you don't like the idea of being inconvenienced to go into a jail system to make sure that drugs aren't in there or do the best that we can, then find another profession. But if you want to be in this one, what we do is so darn important. Yeah, it's difficult. It's not great pay. You don't always get, cheerleaders on the sidelines for you. But you save people's lives and you keep a community safe. So it's unfortunate we don't get paid a lot to do it, but it's damn important, and you better be committed to why we're doing it. Otherwise, find the door. I don't want you.
You mentioned that the employee in question was being surveilled for some time. Was there any clear indication that, that they were suspect for whatever reason?
No, I mean, maybe what I said wasn't as clear as it should have been. Once we were on this, we were on it quick, and we intervened immediately to get him out of there and put him on ice, meaning he was on admin leave out of the system while we worked on the criminal case itself. We didn't want to be too overzealous in how quick we were to finalize the criminal element and to charge him and arrest him, because we wanted to make sure we were addressing all needs of the investigation, which involves other people. But we have folks that all they do is they try to investigate crimes that occur in the jails. Yes, criminals already incarcerated commit other crimes, and it's a full-time job, and they did a great job acquiring evidence. They worked with our internal affairs division, who did a phenomenal job on this, and our narcotics division is getting folded in now and some other things. So it's a multifaceted investigation that involves a lot of tentacles, and I don't know where it'll take us, but this is just one. Tomorrow we'll have something different. All right, I'll take one more and then we're going to call it.
You got tipped off about this 4+ weeks ago. What kind of emotions, what was going through your head? I know you kind of described your reaction to hearing about this, but when it actually happened, what were you thinking?
Well, I've been in this business a long time, and I've seen, as I said, humans fail and do things that you would expect those of us in this profession to have better judgment and better discernment, higher integrity. But humans are flawed and they do bad things. So I try to set it. I think the two things that stand out for me, I'll be personal with you here. The two things that stand out most to me is that a 26-year-old young man, by all, it doesn't mean he can't bounce back. By all counts and purposes, has basically destroyed his career and his life for the short term. He can always find a way to find his way back and have a productive life. But right now, in this moment, his life is turned upside down, number one. Number two, a trusted member of this organization was willing to do something so egregious that it could have cost people their lives, to include the people that stood right next to him, and that disgusts me. We talk about what it's like to work with somebody who will run towards gunfire when you're in danger. This is a situation where it's almost as though someone who stands next to you pushes you in front of gunfire when there's danger. Disgusting. Thank you.